It's hard to think of a more consequential meeting for the Ukrainian leader.
He's all dressed up today.
He's all dressed up, said President Trump. Zelenskyy, wearing the military-style garb he always does, to make it clear that he's a wartime leader.
I'm here as an arbitrator, as a mediator to a certain extent.
But in the Oval Office, what should have been an informal show of diplomatic niceties quickly descended into animosity.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you?
It got worse, as if President Trump were trying to break President Zelenskyy.
We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I'll tell you. I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out.
The American leader's anger with the Ukrainian leader goes back a long way. Remember that President Trump never forgets a slight.
Thank you very much. It's a good
The two men met at the UN in 2019, but Trump already held a grudge against Zelenskyy, who had refused 2 favors Trump had asked for on an infamous call.
On an absolutely perfect phone call.
Favor 1. Investigate the Ukraine business dealings of then Vice President Biden's son.
We had a perfect phone call with the President of Ukraine.
Favor 2. Hand over a computer server to prove a conspiracy theory about interference in the US elections.
It was actually a beautiful conversation.
Zelenskyy said no. Trump temporarily withheld military aid.
The president's reckless actions make impeachment necessary.
And the revelation of the call led to his impeachment. Last night, a Russian drone hit an apartment block in Zaporizhia, as apartment blocks are hit every night. For Ukrainians, an argument in the Oval Office is not politics. It's not entertaining or even shocking. It's about survival or surrender.
I mean, Lindsay, this may have been performative for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, but it's existential for the Ukrainians, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I've been getting messages from Ukrainians who are just unbelievably upset because they think, where does this leave their future? And then you look at the Ukrainian ambassador who was in the meeting. There was a point where she had her head in her hands and she looked like she was on the verge of tears, which is completely understandable because everything that they had hoped for from this meeting, that there would be this mineral deal, there would be the possibility that the Americans, that Trump would, not side completely with Vladimir Putin, but would come back towards Zelenskyy. All gone.
Especially after what was said yesterday in the same office between Prime Minister Starmer and the President. Where does this lead the different and now shattered shards of the peace process, if you can even call it that?
There is no peace process. What there is President Trump talking to his friend Vladimir Putin and trying to work out how to stop the fighting. Now, the issue is that the Ukrainians will not stop fighting. Even if there is a peace deal agreed between America and Ukraine, in which the Europeans may or may not have a role, that will not stop Ukrainians from fighting to get Russians out of their land. That does not mean